Hello, listeners, and welcome to a new episode of the Fanbase Weekly podcast. This is a special edition of the show as we are conducting a panel discussion on the recently released Captain America: Brave New World. Before I get to my whole team here, I just want to let everyone know that all episodes of the Fanbase Weekly podcast this month are sponsored by Studio 127. We're honored to have Studio 127 as a sponsor and look forward to sharing details about that production company with you later in the show. Um, for anyone that doesn't know me, I'm Bryant Dillon. I'm president of Fanbase Press and co-host of the Fanbase Weekly podcast, as well as the writer behind several projects, including the horror graphic novel Something Animal and Identity Thief. I'm going to be your moderator for this podcast, so let me go ahead and introduce my fellow panelists. First up, we've got Hannibal Tabu, a writer, journalist, DJ, poet, and designer living in South Los Angeles with his family. Hannibal is winner of both the 2012 Top Cow Talent Hunt and the 2018-2019 Cultural Trailblazer Award from the City of Los Angeles Department of Cultural Affairs. His supernatural Western comic book series, War Medicine, is available from Wonderman Comics on all digital booksellers. From Laguna Studios, look for his D&D campaign setting book co-created by Damien Poitier called The Sundering, The Nation Beneath Our Feet, and is now completed first season of The Works, audio narratives on YouTube called False Flag, Daddy Lessons, and The Sundering, No More Orphans. Hannibal, always a joy to talk to you, especially about the MCU, so welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Very happy to be here.
We are also joined by a Fanbase contributor, Phillip Kelly. Phillip is also a member of the podcast group Popskl, as well as a professional performer, writer, filmmaker, and comedian. Phil, welcome back once again.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for having me.
Another returning guest, Raf Salazar. He's a freelance artist and co-founder of Hiatus Studios. Raf, always love having your voice on these podcasts.
Yeah, me too. I sound pretty great.
And last but not least, we've got Drew Siragusa. He's a senior Fanbase Press Contributor and co-host of the Fanbase Weekly podcast. Drew, it's been a while, but glad to have you on one of the
Yeah,
Fanbase features.
thanks. I'm glad to be back.
And Drew was my movie buddy to see this movie. So we this is
Yes.
we're embracing the buddy cop element of Brave New World or the Sam and Bucky relationship. We didn't get enough of that in the film, but we'll dive into that later.
Bryant, I
Um,
definitely see you as the bad cop in this.
perfect,
I definitely see you
perfect.
as the bad cop.
Just who I want to be.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give a spoiler warning. Obviously, this film just came out over President's Weekend, so if you haven't seen it and you're worried about spoilers, please come back to the podcast after you've got a chance to see the film. For those who are going on, of course, Captain America: Brave New World is a 2025 superhero film based on Marvel Comics, featuring the character Sam Wilson slash Captain America. It's produced by Marvel Studios, distributed by Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures, and it is the fourth installment in the Captain America film series and the 35th film in the MCU or Marvel Cinematic Universe. The film was directed by Julius Ona from a screenplay by Rob Edwards and the writing team of Malcolm Spellman, Dallin Musson, and Ona and Peter Glantz. Now, in the film, Sam Wilson, portrayed by Anthony Mackie, finds himself in the middle of an international incident after meeting with President Thaddeus Ross, played by Harrison Ford in this film. He must soon discover the reason behind a nefarious global plot before the true mastermind has the entire world seeing red. Aha, there you got your pun in. Now, Brave New World, it's received mixed reviews so far from the critics. There's been a lot of commentary on three specific elements. There's been the political subject matter, which has received some critical commentary with the Hollywood Reporter invoking that the scene where Ross transformed into Red Hulk and caused havoc across Washington, D.C., seemed like a fantasy of real-world U.S. President Donald Trump. And Entertainment Weekly joked that, quote, the most unbelievable part is a U.S. president with empathy, a sense of responsibility for his actions, and a capacity for change, end quote. The Wrap saw it a little bit different, saying that the film's steadfast refusal to engage with its own ideas, either by artistic design or corporate mandate, reeks of timidity. Um, Now, the characterization was also slightly criticized. Vulture wrote that the film marked Marvel's turn into a giant slot machine, opining that the film's bid to create sincerity came off as phony. And some critics were also polarized on the visuals, with Collider actually saying that the CG in the film was worse than The Incredible Hulk, which was, if everyone remembers, the second film in the MCU. Um, well, let's hear what the voices that matter have to say about this film. The voices on this podcast. I want to know what each of you think about, you know, Brave New World. What are your overall reactions, and do you feel that it? How do you feel that it differs from, the 35 or I guess 34 previous films in the MCU? Hannibal, why don't you start us off on this one?
Sure thing. I went to go see this with my daughter and with one of my screenwriter friends, and I enjoyed the film. Is it going to be a jaw dropper that I'm going to be turning back to as a timeless classic? No. Is it going to be, Corman's Fantastic Four? No. It's a good, very enjoyable action film that accomplishes a lot of things. What I really enjoyed about it was the way it ratcheted up the tension slowly throughout the narrative. And I could definitely see it wore its influences on its sleeves, from the Manchurian Candidate to conspiracy theory to the Bourne films. I could definitely see the influence of its cultural DNA on display. Um, Hearing these reviews, which are, my first time hearing them, I'm like, oh wow, that's a complete overreaction. It's completely dumb. Don't do that. So because, I've seen bad films. I sat through
Sure.
Madam Web.
Hmm.
I know what it's like. So to put that kind of onus and weight on basically an action film is like asking for, it's like asking, I don't know, it's like asking, I'm trying to think of a really like, it's like asking Pauly Shore to do Shakespeare. Could it be done? Yes. Should it be done? I don't think that's necessary. That's not what that's for.
Well, we seem to be in a world, and I thought maybe we had progressed a little bit past it because it seemed like maybe a 5 year ago thing. But there has been a feeling of like the MCU has become such a monolith and so successful at some points that every new film we have this reaction of like this is the worst MCU film ever. The MCU is over. It's done. And maybe we'll get to a point where there's some truth to that, but I do think that you're right. I don't know that the film is as bad as the reviews seem to be trying to make it out. It may not be mind blowing in the same way that something like I don't Winter Soldier caught everyone off guard. But yeah, I don't know that I agree with the reviewers. I'm more on your side.
To just close that out, and I've said this for years, if you put the Incredible Hulk film before Iron Man, people would think it was groundbreaking. Its biggest cost was the fact that it came out after
Sure. Hmm.
that. And in the same way that this, in some ways, truthfully, is a sequel to that, truth be told, based on the storylines.
Yeah.
If this had come out before Winter Soldier, we'd be heralding it as this amazing, groundbreaking approach on things. But the timing, and the order of its release,
Yeah.
honestly, does it more of a disservice than anything in the actual canon of the film.
Well, Drew, I'll turn to you next because I know that
Mhm.
you and I have had some discussions about how um, perhaps this film being, pushed back from its release date, some of the effects of what COVID has done to the story structure of the MCU. Other elements that we had lots of delays, the streaming service, the streaming wars, what that did,
Mhm.
all affecting the overall storyline. What were your thoughts on Brave New World and what do you think? What are your ultimate, I guess, assessment overall?
Yeah, I mean I liked it. I agree with Hannibal where like it's not groundbreaking. I don't think it needs to be, but at the same time, the previous three Captain America movies like were foundational to
Sure.
like the path of the MCU, and I don't feel that with this one. I don't
Mm,
necessarily think it needs that, but I like each of those three previous Captain America movies like shaped the MCU. Um, and this felt more of a recap on previous threads that they were tying together, which I think they did well. I just don't think, like I like to your point of all the delays and all of that. So many things felt pieced together in this movie, and I thought worked, but didn't do anything new and exciting, if that makes sense. Like I think everything was competently done. It was fun, but there was no like this isn't going to be one of those that I watch all the time, like Infinity War or Winter Soldier or Civil War. Like those are ones that like you go back and rewatch all the time, especially years later, and you see how, oh, you were setting up this thing 10 years before you actually did it. I don't see that in this. I see more of, hey, we're tying together loose ends. I mean, this is the return of the villain is the longest like loose end that the MCU has had, which was very fun to see something from what 15 years
Sure,
ago.
yeah, it's always nice when they
Um,
dig deep like that. Yeah.
yes, but at the same time, I didn't see anything like there was no, Winter Soldier. You had the collapse of Shield, which like was huge. I mean, in some ways, the Captain America movies are almost more monumental to the structure of the MCU than even the Avengers movies.
Sometimes, sure.
Right, like they are shaping them, and I didn't feel that with this. I thought, like I said, I enjoyed it. Um, I there were definitely pieces that felt like they were scrambling to fit things together but didn't have the budget or time to do it at the last minute. Like Liv Tyler, it was great to see her back, but didn't wasn't given anything to do. She just kind of shows up and says, "Hi, Dad." At like, whereas you could have easily worked her in with the climax. So many of these things just felt like we only have her for a day. We're gonna just put her in right here, and we'll deal with it later. And like I said, they pulled it off. It just nothing felt special and extraordinary.
I mean, I agree with some of those points. I think what will be interesting is we might return to this, later in the MCU and be like, oh, what, the foundational elements are there because we do have like the introduction of adamantium. We do have a push to reestablish the new Avenger or a new team of Avengers. So
But
there
to be fair,
are.
those are all things from like the adamantium is from the Eternals, right? Like, so it wasn't anything new. It was just,
Sure.
hey,
It's
remember the
it's more,
Eternals.
yeah, it's more building upon, I guess, what has come.
Mm,
But I guess it reminds me of one of those TV episodes in like a season where you're like, oh, it didn't stand out as like one of the huge episodes of the season,
mm,
but when you revisit it maybe without those expectations, you might go, oh, there's more here. But I think you have a valid point. Like one thing that I felt very much about is that the film is good. I like the film. It's a great film
mm.
for Sam Wilson, but it does feel like the financial muscle or oomph, I don't even know how to describe it, from Disney and Marvel wasn't behind it the way it
Yeah.
was for Steve Rogers. And that's just very disappointing given this should be Sam's like huge debut
Hmm.
as under that mantle. Phil, what are your thoughts on Brave New World?
Well, I don't disagree with anything that's been said. We've had like a huge break between the sort of the flow that we had with the MCU. Then we had COVID, and then we had the strikes. So it's been like 3 years, 4 years since we've dealt with some of these storylines. So I felt like there was a lot of packing in of ideas to catch people up again.
Sure.
It was one big thing, and that kind of weighed down some of the pacing and things like that. And then I also felt like it was trying to be a sharp left turn from the Kang Dynasty, where we were supposed to be going with that ultimately. So they had to like probably rewrite a lot of the script at some point to be like, oh, we're not going to deal with that anymore. We need to kind of refocus and go this other direction. So it does feel, I think scrambling was the word used. I felt like I think one of Hannibal or Drew said that, but it did feel like there was a lot of scrambling in where to put the focus on in this script, where at times it didn't feel like there was enough focus on what was actually happening in this movie for Sam Wilson. I look, let me say this first too. I really enjoyed the film. Like I had a heck of a good time. You know, there were, there are issues sometimes though when you're sitting there and you're like, I would have made that editing choice instead. When you're sort of
Sure.
outside of the film watching
Yeah.
it a little bit as opposed to like fully invested. And I found myself doing that a lot. Um, I, Ross had this great arc to his character. I felt like Sam Wilson's character was kind of, we were getting a lot of the same thing we got in Falcon and the Winter Soldier as far as his character arc in that, which not everybody saw the series. So, for people that just see the films and don't watch the shows, there's a lot of reasons why I suppose you have elements like that. But I sadly, I didn't feel like Sam Wilson owned this movie in the way I wanted him to, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't feel like it was his story necessarily, and that his personal stakes and, Isaiah was great, and it was great to have him there in this story and a part of that and everything. But they kind of leave those personal stakes behind, and so it feels less personal for Cap as we go through it. For Captain America, as maybe we it's easy to compare to Winter Soldier and be like, it's not as good as Winter Soldier, but it's a good framework because you have Captain America, like Winter Soldier is the crux of that whole movie to get, he's part of it all the way through. And in this, there were like 3 different stories in this that were all vying for attention. And I think to some degree that made each story a little bit weaker, and kind of dropped the stakes a little bit in general. But some structural stuff worked. I thought the build up to the Red Hulk at the end was fantastic. Again, so much time was spent on the Ross storyline and how it fit into the movie, that felt like the clearest sort of arc to me, emotionally and story wise and everything.
It's interesting too because it's I feel like we're all kind of dancing around the idea, but like I feel like and anyone who disagrees with this, feel free to say so when you're speaking up. But I feel like we all have like a little bit higher expectations for the MCU than the average blockbuster. So even when an MCU film falls a little bit lower than expectations, it still tends to be a little stronger than some of the other genre content that's out there. And so that is this film in many ways. And I guess what I think is interesting is, for me at least, is I don't know. I'm still debating whether I love the plot twist and what it says, but it's very interesting to take Thaddeus Ross and give him a redemption story and not undercut it at the end, not make him suddenly be like, nope, actually I was evil the whole time, because that's exactly what I was expecting, was like some sort of predictable twist.
Sure.
And they just really went with like, no, this guy, mortality makes you confront some of the bullshit that you've got inside you, and especially if you have kids, you're looking back at your life. What do I leave behind when I die? And that has significant effects on you. And to have Sam be someone who's going like, I think it's legit, I don't think he's playing a game. That the empathy there is it's a strong story.
It is. Yeah, totally. It worked really well.
Raf, what are your thoughts? What are your feelings on Brave New World? How does it stand out from the MCU previously?
Well, you're talking about like Infinity Saga. It's kind of not great. But if you're comparing it to the movies just before it, it's so much better than like Quantumania. Man, the Marvels. Ugh. What else? Thor: Love and Thunder. Oh my God. So like, I think the plan was to like put out really shitty movies so this one could shine a little bit better. But overall, I think when I watched it, it felt like I just binged 3 episodes of a TV show,
Okay.
which, it's okay. And I know some of you said like you might not go back to it. I kind of disagree because it has that like dishwashing TV feel where you can do a chore in the middle of it and then you look back at it and you know exactly where you are and what has happened. So I think I might rewatch this when I'm doing work.
Netflix executives will love this
Oh yeah.
film.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. I'm like, because obviously I wanted it to be more, but I don't know what happened behind the scenes between like the rewrites, the reshoots. It's got like 6 writers. And it had a lot to say, but it never followed through. So it's like they took away its like edge. So it could be kind of this middle of the road, everyone like easy digestible. So I'm like, yeah, I could watch this over and over. it, just like the movie, there's like no stakes in it for me. So yeah, I like it was okay. Like there was no better way to spend Valentine's Day and celebrate Black History Month with a Red Hulk and Falcon as Captain America. So what else? What else could I
Perfect.
have done that day?
The perfect President's Day weekend Captain America film.
Oh my God, yeah, it's President Day
I
weekend.
mean,
Oh, trifecta right there.
well, you bring up some ideas, Raf, that I definitely want to get into later regarding, I think the corporate mandates and new direction at Disney that I think also play into this. But let's start with I want to give some praise to this film. What moments did stand out to everyone? What were the big moments of the film? What worked for you? Let's go around and find out what everyone thinks. Drew, why don't you start us off on this one?
I really enjoyed there was the aerial dogfight over like the battleships.
Yeah,
We've seen similar like in Iron Man 3, there was the cool like aerial fight, but we haven't really seen any like long extended big like aerial dogfight battles like that. And I think that for me was really the big like action set piece of the movie. I just had a lot of fun with that. They managed to make it interesting and keep changing it up. It it's weird to say, but it reminded me of Doctor Strangelove because the whole time they're trying to stop the like rogue from going and bombing the other nation to set off World War III, and not in a comedic way, but that idea of like the stakes are so high
sure.
for the world and for Cap as well, of like I don't want to go through World War III here. We gotta I gotta attack my own guys who are being controlled to stop this big war. So like, and that's one thing that's important with these kind of big action movies, that you have the personal stakes within it. I think that pulled it off really well.
It was an interesting action sequence, and I mean, we saw a little of that stuff in Winter Soldier with Sam backing up Captain America. But it is interesting that it's taken us so long to get like to this point because he tells stories about doing this in the
Yeah.
war and like losing his co-pilot and stuff. So this is not new superhero stuff for Sam. He's
Mhm.
been doing it for a long time. Phil, what stood out to you?
Um, honestly, I liked the way the film treated a lot of the secondary characters. I loved Sidewinder. I loved the Ruth Bat character. I liked a lot of the characterizations that were happening in this film. Isaiah was fantastic.
Isaiah was fantastic, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There's some. I love the focus on building that out because that really does strengthen a movie. Is how well you know the side characters and how well they're portrayed. So I think that all the stuff between Sidewinder and Captain America were pretty fantastic scenes. Just the spark, that chemistry between the two of them was really palpable. And another moment I really loved was Sam sort of questioning whether he should have taken the serum. It I think it was the scene when he was there with Bucky. But it really kind of grounded that idea of that we talk a lot about in cultural circles, how black people have to fight 3 or 4 times as hard to get to the same place that
Sure.
a white dude would get, and that's essentially what's happening here. That's exactly what that's about. And so I did like that moment because maybe it didn't strike me watching Falcon and the Winter Soldier, but for some reason it really struck me there. I was like, oh shit, that's what he's talking about right now. I was like, so it's just a really great
Yeah.
kind of perfect moment where he's like, maybe I should have taken this easy way that, everybody else has taken. And yeah, I don't know. There was something about it that really struck me this time watching that moment. So,
Well, I think
yeah.
there's one of the times when the film was really working was when both the times that you're talking about. I think the relationship with Isaiah Bradley was probably part of the strongest of the film, and then some of those moments where you had particularly that, I mean, they used it as like a trailer moment, I think, but Harrison Ford as Ross saying, like, you're not Steve Rogers,
Yeah.
like essentially like trying to say like you might be wearing this uniform, but you're not, you don't meet the standard,
Right.
definitely, tying into some pretty powerful themes. And I don't know if it was intended, um, to echo in the way that it is in current politics, but it definitely echoes. Raf, what stood out to you? What was a moment that you thought this film excelled at?
Oh, excelled at? I don't, not much, but stood out. Um, there were a couple. I actually had to think about this because I think at the end of it, it was just, again, very, very middle of the road for me. But one thing that, like, I guess kept getting my attention as I watched it was so, like, after like every big, like, set piece in this story, like, if you see it as events, like, you have the rescue and return of the adamantium in the beginning. And then the next part is like the summit meeting with the attempted assassin. If you break it up there, every scene from transitions with a news report, either on TV or on the radio, kind of just to catch you up almost immediately to like what 5 minutes you just saw, which I was like, it kind of it was kind of funny the first few times. And I'm like, oh my God, they're gonna keep doing it. That it would just recap everything. We just like, oh, Isaiah Bradley is tempted. So it's like, yeah, we just saw this. Why are we being told again as the audience? Are they afraid that we didn't get what we saw? And so there's like, and then it just occurred to me like there's a lot of spoon feeding in this movie. And once like it hit me, I just kept seeing it and seeing it. But I will say one good thing.
Okay,
I like how Sam fights with his wings and his shield.
it's pretty
I
cool.
think probably the best thing they ever do is like how to create choreography that suits the character and their skill set. And I especially loved when he used the shield and he just used his rocket pack to do like I don't know if you've seen Marvel vs. Capcom, Captain America's sliding dash move with a shield called like Charging Star. And I'm like,
Mhm.
dude, he did Charging Star. And I like that's like the most fun. So
I do want to point out something with the news reports though, Raph, is they actually did something really kind of clever. I agree it was too much, but they did something clever in which they lied to us. Is they outright said
oh right.
Samuel Stearns was responsible. So at least, and again, they
Right.
could have done more with that, but I did appreciate that they like,
Some commentary on the
yeah,
media.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
like they outright
they did it
lied.
that they did that like once.
The
But
once,
yeah,
yes. No, it was
I
something that was
forgot
a
about
really
that.
cool idea for that could have been done more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hannibal,
True.
what stood out to you as a powerful moment or a outstanding moment in this film?
What stood out to me was the fact that you've got Giancarlo Esposito, and you got so little time to make him work, and he's like, "That's okay. I'm Giancarlo Esposito. I got this."
That's what I
Because,
do.
because when he comes into these scenes, he is Gus Fringing full speed. He is just going at you with no relent, and I love that. So I like basically there's nothing that Giancarlo Esposito can do practically in my brain that is wrong. But what was really powerful to me was Carl Lumley. Carl Lumley, the acting that there's a moment when. And I hate how often Captain America's got him arrested in this movie, but whatever. That's also I mean, that's America. But there's a close up on Carl Lumley's face when he's behind the bars and he does this moment where he doesn't say anything, but his face goes through like four different expressions and the acting and the craft that he brought to elevate that role really spoke to not only his internal struggle as, I can't believe I trusted them and they betrayed me again for trying to stand up for this stupid country. To I need to try to make something better for this new cap who really does, like I did, really does believe that this can be better. But I can't let what they're doing to me taint what he's doing.
Yeah.
So that whole scene where he's talking to Sam Wilson is incredibly powerful, and Carl Lumley's acting is just of such a high caliber. And watching that craft on display for me was like, I was like, okay, okay, let's go Meisner effect. I mean Meisner method of acting. Let's go. What do you got? So yeah, I really enjoyed that quite a bit.
it's such a impactful scene. That was probably the biggest scene to me as well, where it's just it took me back to feeling. I feel like Denzel Washington has a moment like that in The Hurricane. That is
Hmm.
where he tells
Yes.
Yeah.
them to leave him, like leave me alone.
So good.
I'm dead. Leave me, like go live your lives. And that feeling is in there. And also, I mean, I want to get into it in a moment when we talk about themes, Hannibal. But this idea of the shame that is felt by different characters in this film, and I was hit by it in that specific moment of like that he feels this shame of, as you said, that I let my guard down, but also that somehow what I did is going to reflect poorly on Sam, and that he hates that. You can just tell that there's so much going on inside there.
Yeah,
Just a beautiful scene.
that's something that Black people honestly are very used to. When Giselle Young wrote The Monarchy, nobody Black wrote for the big two for like 5 or 6 years. I mean, like the actions of one are seen as endemic and affecting subsequent people in a way that many other communities don't experience.
Well, let's dive into some of these characters a little bit more. I want to start with Captain America himself, Sam Wilson. Um, Do you feel like there is anything that this film tells us about Sam Wilson that we didn't know yet about this character? And Hannibal, I'll throw it back to you to start that off.
There's one thing that it told me about Sam that confused me, I will admit. In the dogfight, which I love, that Sam can be flying at nearly sonic, supersonic speeds on a thing and still throw a shield faster than that without a super soldier serum. I'm like, wait, what? You can do what now? How does that?
He
Wait,
was using inertia, he's using his speed, and then he's transferring it to the shield as he lets go.
It's Wakanda technology.
sure, okay.
Yeah, sure.
Anyway,
Vibranium.
it also is very funny to me, and I mentioned this to my daughter while we were in the movie, that Falcon's American made suit fell apart almost on the first hit, and that the Wakandan made suit, Wakanda strong. So,
Oh yeah.
I guess I mean my uncle built Chevys in Detroit. Maybe they don't build them like they used to. I don't know. But as for Sam Wilson, this told me very much that. Uh, it's going to be difficult for Sam Wilson to be taken seriously as Captain America. Not because of anything that he did, not because of any problems in his character, not with any problems in his skill set, but because screw you, you're black, honestly. Um, at one point, Ross said, he said something about after that, you're not Steve Rogers, that he called him son,
Yeah.
which
Hmm.
if you're a black guy in New York
Ooh.
and
Yeah.
somebody that doesn't respect
Yeah.
you calls you son, it's time to squabble up. We about to throw hands.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and what I noticed there is that they cut a line from the trailer where Sam said, "I'm not." That's cut from the film. That's not in the movie. So I was
Hmm.
like, "Oh, okay." So he actually didn't stand up for himself in that moment. He just kind of stormed out. That's kind of weak sauce. Um, so this is going to be a very different Captain America in a lot of ways. First of all, in that stance, and second of all, in that normally a Captain America film, with the exception of the first Avenger, are Avengers point five movies. You see a gajillion other major characters
Hmm.
run through. Here we got Bucky, and I honestly don't think much of Ruth Batsarat because of all people who should know about mind control, it should be a Black Widow. Just saying, just saying. But I'm like, wait, what? You're not even going to investigate? Baby girl, what are you doing? What are we doing here? Like, so with all of those things stacked against him, and for him to still have continually getting up, getting up, getting up, and coming back is a testament to both the mantle itself and how much he puts in it. Because, if he was super confident and jingoistic, we'd be like, oh, he's arrogant, oh, he's this, oh, he's that. Which, I would actually be fine with. But to see the doubting Cap, the concern Cap, it speaks to the struggle that the United States is having overall. There is a crisis over the soul of the country right now about what will be the American character. And the results based on the surroundings of Cap don't look great. The president's in jail, player.
Yeah. Hmm.
That's not great. So seeing all those things lets me know that this Cap, he may be running the same distance as Steve Rogers, but he's definitely got more obstacles in his way.
Absolutely, absolutely. Phil, anything that you feel like you learned about Sam Wilson from this film?
I did like the sort of focus on his his lack of having the serum, how easily he was injured, taking bullets, taking cuts, like the sort of psychological warfare being used against him that Hannibal was just talking about. It also works on the physical level,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Hmm.
Which I loved. His fight against Sidewinder, he took some hits. For him to step up and go up against a Hulk, knowing that is like insane. That's an insane man does that.
Well, and
But
it's like an
you know,
80s trope too, that like have
yeah.
like the hero get the shit kicked out of
Oh
him, but
yeah,
just keep coming.
100%.
And I don't know,
Yeah.
I have an affinity
I
for
I
heroes
love
like
that.
that.
I
Um,
do.
Daredevil.
Same.
Sorry.
Yeah.
yeah, right,
Likewise.
exactly.
Likewise.
Mhm.
You find yourself on their side even more. That they can take those hits and keep coming, like the physical
Yeah,
hits like that.
yeah.
So I did like that focus on his character. I did like how he's gotten to the point where he just storms in on the president. Like he's like what like, hey, step up, we're gonna talk. I am Captain America. This is
Right.
what so I did like that element about his character in this. Because that's that takes some balls, right? To step up
Yeah,
to
it's
the
like
president
Elon
like that.
Musk going into the Oval Office.
And
Yeah.
holding a press. He
Too
should have brought
soon.
his kid.
Too soon.
Right. So those were elements, about the character that I did like. I feel like it'll be interesting seeing, because there was always that who's running the Avengers, Captain America or Iron Man, when it was
Yeah,
Steve Rogers. And I wonder how that sort of
Captain
it,
America.
yeah, I
I'm
mean,
just putting my
yeah,
vote out
yeah,
there.
yeah, sure. But it'll be interesting to see
Ask Cap to pick
how
up the check.
right. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out, who is going to be kind of heading up the Avenger, like how that kind of power play is going to work out in future movies, I guess, with, all the other elements we're talking about here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
you
and I
know,
mean, we
it,
definitely there's an interesting path forward with the movies that we're seeing. I mean, we literally, if you saw the same trailers that I did, there's a trailer before this film that goes, "The
yeah,
Avengers are not coming. The Avengers
yeah,
are
with the
not here."
Thunderbolts,
Yeah.
yeah, the Thunderbolts, yeah,
So,
yeah.
so yeah, we're definitely in a different place than we are before, and there's less support for Sam. Let me ask this, just because it spawned off of this idea of Sam taking a beating and keep coming back for more. Um, did anyone feel like we should have had the I can do this all day line at some point in this? You
There
feel
was a
like that's
similar
too much
line
of
to it.
a
I
too
can't
much
remember
of a
exactly.
Steve
Yeah,
thing?
Yeah.
yeah.
There's like a
There was
similar-ish
something
kind of line,
similar.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but no. I didn't need a
A repeat of that? Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
or like they did with the last Alien film when he
Oh yeah.
weirdly quoted Ripley
Well, you
before
know
Ripley
what?
even said the
Sam and
line. I
Steve
was like,
knew
Yeah.
each
you
other.
know,
Yeah,
yeah, I
but
guess
like
they did, but
It's a
if
little bit.
Sam used that line, like the shadow of getting out of
mhm,
Rogers,
It just become
yeah,
yeah.
it
yeah,
became
Mhm.
bigger and darker. So
Yeah,
I'm
that's
like
a fair
really
point.
happy they didn't.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
Ralph, do you feel like you learned anything about Sam from this film?
unfortunately, I watched the Disney Plus show, and
You were not a
his
fan?
I actually like the Disney Plus show, but
I
the
did as
problem is
well.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, but like that was when I was like really thirsty for Marvel content. Remember, like I was like, oh, I need more Marvel, and then they gave us so much Marvel. I'm like, oh, too much Marvel. But the problem is that his character arc and his journey in his Disney Plus show is very similar to what just happened in this movie because he's still doubting himself. He's still trying to prove himself. And then in the end, he finds like reassurance that what he's doing is right. And like he does deserve the shield. So no, I get it. Like not everyone has to watch everything. So like,
You
but at the
repeat
same
some
time, like,
beats, right?
why
Yeah.
did you? There wasn't really anything new for me because I'm like, I thought I already saw this. I thought we had grown from that. Like he had grown from that, and to still kind of like dealing with it a little more. I think we could have done away with it and maybe focus more of like a different kind of character arc, or like again, I think Isaiah Bradley probably one of the best parts of this movie. Like, and like the fact that he's got such a like the tension between him and the U.S. government, right? So that immediately makes Ross his enemy, or like. So if you could have just played those three up and like made like a journey through that, I think it would have been better.
I kind of agree. I mean, I feel like there was a story here that could have been done about how do you be Captain America
Right.
with a government that has these things in its past that has done stuff to
To you and your
especially
community,
just
right?
not only just your community, but it's amplified by the idea that he's friends with someone. Like he's
Right.
literally, friends with this Captain America that has been abused and hidden away and jailed. So it's both personal and has the community
And I think
aspects.
that's where the stronger story could have been.
But I think,
Because
as we're going to get into it, I think honestly, I think the corporate mentality has changed. I think Disney's afraid of what they leaned into with the MCU previously. I think they're afraid of any suggestion of diversity or negative connotations on the conservative consumer. And I think we get a watered down Captain America Brave New World because of that, unfortunately.
I mean, yeah, no DEI, right? So
That seems to
Yeah.
be the push of.
Yeah.
Well, are there any other characters that anyone feels like we should touch upon before moving on? Go ahead,
You
Phil.
know,
I guess
oh, go ahead. Drew, did you want
Very good.
to?
Yeah, Drew,
I,
go ahead,
I,
jump
I
in.
was just gonna say for me with Cap, I didn't necessarily like learn anything new, but I did enjoy rediscovering Sam's therapist side in this.
Yeah, I
Mm,
like that they
that
Um,
kept
was
that in
nice.
there.
That was
Obviously, yeah.
nice.
they kind of forgot about that for a while, and then there's something really nice about Cap being a therapist for both on the personal level and then like on the national level of like having, you have him taking Falcon under his wing, literally and figuratively. You have him trying to help Isaiah heal and help the country heal this trauma. Um, I really, really was glad that they brought that back to the character. That, like I said, they mentioned there was a big part in Winter Soldier, and then since then they kind of just forgot about it. And it's really nice to have Cap working to heal people.
They've kept a nice through line with that, and I always really appreciate the subtlety of Steve picking up the counseling sessions during when
Hmm.
Sam is snapped. Um, and so yeah, I agree. I think that's an awesome point to make him not only be true to that character, but make him different as a Captain America from what we've seen previously. Phil, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was just gonna say, the leader who looked really cool in the film, and I love Tim Blake Nelson. He's fantastic. He's a fantastic actor. Um, I was so confused by the fact that he's this brilliant mind that could come up with all these equations, but didn't know that Ross was gonna renege on his promise. Like,
Well,
what was
maybe he was
that?
expecting that, I guess.
I
I don't
I
know.
guess I don't know. Like that's a really, really long game then. But I was also really
he
confused
did
by
turn
the
himself in,
well, that's what
right?
I'm
So it
wondering is
is. It's
why
longer than you
why
think.
why did he turn himself in? I'm so confused about that.
His
I
his plan
like
wasn't
his sort of
about his own, yeah. His plan wasn't about his own redemption, but just exposing Ross.
Yeah, he just wanted
It
to
like
make
so he didn't
Ross.
care.
Hell
It
yeah.
was he just wanted the world to see Ross as it was. He
he
didn't
he,
care.
he
Yeah.
could have done that without turning himself in because he played like he had an audio recording play obviously to the speakers and not him. So I was so confused by that story element. Like why the 7 moments where he had to turn himself in at the end. So I thought they really fumbled the leader in this movie, the character. I think that's one of my big character negatives about the
Okay.
film.
Do you have
I
something, Hannibal?
Yeah, I actually,
Please
Philip's
do.
confusion on the leader is fair
Please
because
explain it to me.
it felt like what happened with Zemo.
Yeah.
You've got all these
Mhm.
intricate
Mhm.
plans that require
Yeah.
these intricate, specific things to happen for it to go just right, and then at the end it's like, all right, I'm done. It's like, really?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I was like,
like,
what?
dog, be a
What?
supervillain, show up. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
come back. This is a franchise, baby. We got other roles you could play. What are you doing?
You know what?
So
I will just give one prop to. I think Zemo does have that, but I also think is able to. He has like the Thanos moment because he's basically like my work is done. I will sit down like because we watch the Avengers do tear themselves apart from that moment. You know, like
yeah,
And
but
it made more sense because like Zemo's like, I did what I need to do. I want to be with my dead family. I don't need to be here anymore.
I guess
And
I
all
get
yeah.
that. But then Dance Moves Zemo doesn't show like somebody who wants to be with his dead family. I mean,
yes,
I
he
totally
found a
get your
new
Storm
lease on
Shadow. I
life
do.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Buy the dance move Xena toy that you press the button in the back and he does his
no,
little
Someone
thing.
gave
thank
him a
you.
ski mask, and all of a
I
sudden he
love
was
it.
excited again.
Yeah, I
I'm
guess so.
good. I'm good. But the thing that really bothered me about this film was Ruth Bat-Saraf because there's nothing that she did that Taylor didn't do better. As the Secret Service person was actually better at everything in terms of the advice she gave the president, the approach to things. She was better at everything. And I'm like, why do we have these two characters? We know we don't want Saber because, dear Lord knows, we don't want to be blowing up Gazan people. That's not what we want. So why do we need Ruth Bat-Saraf in this movie when she's not even good at the one thing she's supposed to be good at, which is national security advising? I'm like, literally did not even for Joaquin to have found the footage thing first, and for her to stumble on it after that, I was like, baby girl, what are you doing? Like,
She
we need to look at your performance reviews. Like, really seriously, we need to look at your performance reviews and have a personal improvement plan because you are not doing the job. You are not.
she got one of those easy confirmations.
Mm-mm.
Um,
Recess confirmation. I don't like it.
she was previously a Fox News host. Um,
Oh,
Oh no.
you
I'm
know,
hit.
she feels like very much around. I mean, this is, I guess, kind of what we're feeling when we talk about some of the elements of the film that are not working or where it feels a little, I guess, dampened. This is like a leftover character. I mean, I know from because I'm the father of two 4 year olds. I know that there was a McDonald's toy where this character was in a fly some sort of suit, superhero suit. That doesn't appear in the film. She should have been almost edited out of the film, and I wonder if she couldn't have been. Maybe they shot some things where they're like, she's in this scene. We're not going to be able to reshoot this scene, so we can't completely excise this character from the film. But clearly, there was a lot of behind the scenes changes for whatever reasons, a multitude of reasons. It sounds like, and this character is a I don't know if she's a victim of it, but she's definitely a remnant of a previous version of the film. Yeah.
Yeah, when they get onto the battleship or when they're going to the island, the adamantium island, she gets out of the I think it's a helicopter. She's wearing a jacket, but underneath it, she has a suit on versus like her like
Like a
business, yeah,
superhero
her
suit.
business casual. Yeah, like underneath that jacket, there's like design, like metal design on her chest. And I saw that, I'm like, what is she wearing under that? And I was like,
Cosplay.
right? Like, I'm like, why did she change into that? I've never understood, but like now that you're saying, and I'm like, holy crap, she probably there are scenes where she's probably wearing like a super suit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. Well, let me ask you about one other character because I had, as I mentioned, I think a little bit earlier, I had some mixed feelings. I love the idea of doing something unexpected with Ross, but I also live in today's world. And so there's part of me that can, separate Ross from our current president. I don't think that they're supposed to be the exact same character in any way. But Ross, while I love this idea of empathy and I love this idea of him having these second thoughts and reevaluating his life and maybe making a final turn before he passes or before, he has to confront that final journey. Um, there's also part of me that is like, I don't know if I have that empathy anymore. This guy's done a lot of damage and I don't know. I sat with this film going like with the previous MCU, I feel like I did feel like lots of these things were genuine, like when Steve reaches out to Bucky, even though he's a mind controlled assassin, I'm in that moment entirely. and there was part of me that was struggling to accept the reality of Sam reaching out to Ross. Not that Sam wouldn't do that, but just like I there was part of me going like, is this a fairy tale? You know, I don't know.
He was like
What are
hunted down. I don't understand why he gave him a pass.
yeah, what are everyone's thoughts on Ross and this twist and changing character and how did it work or not work for you? I'll open it. Whoever wants to jump in there, feel free to
Okay.
jump in.
Okay, here's the thing. It is a fairy tale. It's the same fairy tale that when I go out and I see them marching and doing the "We Shall Overcome" thing for King Day and the parade, and when I see them like Hakeem Jeffries talking about how we're going to work together with these people. I'm like, no, no, sweetie, you are not living in reality, and a part of that is intentional. If Captain America is living in reality, you get Ultimate Captain America, who was not a hero but an instrument of
Sure.
policy.
Yeah.
Um, at multiple times in the comic, Steve Rogers has been like, "Nah, I ain't messing with y'all. I'm putting down the flag. I'm putting down the shit. Whatever. I'm standing for something bigger than that." At multiple
Yeah.
points, he's done that, and it's been necessary because America has been in the wrong. George Lucas very famously said, "No, the empire is the United States." I always meant that. That was very clear, crystal clear to everything I was doing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, if you represent the flag, if you represent certain things, then you have to accept the right and wrong of it. And an ultimate cap doesn't have any problem with that because he's like, this A doesn't stand for France. Um, which sounded really illiterate to me. But anyway, but yeah, this is a fairy tale that Sam Wilson, the hope, as Obama said, the audacity of hope that you're carrying through at all points, that you have to believe that something's better. And if you do, that's cute, I guess. And Captain America kind of has to, I guess, but I don't. And lots of other people don't. And to accept that fairy tale for them is either a bless your heart sort of thing towards their naivety or an American tragedy waiting to happen. I got to go check CNN to see which one is going to happen, honestly. I don't know.
Hannibal, do you think, I mean, because these stories do appeal to like a mass audience and obviously they're, hitting a young demographic and an older demographic at the same time.
Mhm.
We don't expect them, as we talked about earlier, to be necessarily like, this is get your politics from Captain America, but they do speak to the values in our society. And I guess what I want to ask about that is, do you believe it would have been better to reflect on I guess in some ways the selfishness of the idea that a person like Ross doesn't change until they're personally affected, by things? Or or do you feel like there is an advantage to the fairy tale of like Captain America should reach out because maybe he can change, this person's heart in the moment, like
I'm going to reframe that a little bit. There is an advantage to the fairy tale for certain people. There are people who would much rather see uh, Hakeem Jeffries than Dr. Melina Abdullah. There are people who would much rather see Martin Luther King than Huey Newton. And the people who are willing to reach out the hand, the people who are willing to hope, the people who are willing to carry on this kind of, especially the people from oppressed communities like Black and Latino communities or LGBTQIA, these people who are willing to say, no, let's try to work it out. Let's try to reach the hand. The nation wants them more than they want the people who are ready to push things harder to change things. Do I think it's the right course? Honestly, no. But it's definitely the better thing for the Disney stakeholders. That's definitely what they would want.
anyone else have any thoughts on Thaddeus Ross and his changing character?
I mean, I agree that it's a fantasy. I also think that that is a very Captain America fantasy of it's a Luke Skywalker fantasy of wanting to believe in the good. I mean, if you go through that battle and like Sam just has to kill Ross to save the day. I mean, one, that's more realistic, but two, that's an Iron Man movie. Like I
That's
think
Snyder.
yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
right? Like
That's
so I don't have a problem with watching fantasy. I also think we need to understand
Sure.
that doesn't always align with reality, but there is something to strive for with fantasy. I mean, like Luke forgives Darth Vader, and should he? Probably not. Like Vader did some terrible things, but in a fantasy, you can do that. You can have that. Yeah, he's forgiven. Like when you're like, well, I mean, you
Well,
know,
and I think
hey,
what you have to
yeah.
do with these stories is they start out as like those iconic sort of or archetypal tales, you know, morality tales. But if you are going to do something like the MCU or Star Wars as it's expanding, you have to dig deeper into those ideas, you know? You
Mhm.
have to look at them and go like, "Hey, well, all right, maybe it was right in the perspective of this, but maybe here, looking at it from this perspective, we have some more things to further examine." And I guess I wonder if I definitely don't know that I'm looking for a Captain America who's like, "You're executed," you know, like here's judge and
Mhm.
jury. But I feel like I feel like there's something slightly, not that the MCU is this paragon of values before, but it feels like there was something that was a little bit more introspective previously, and I feel like they blinked a little bit in this film, and I can feel that corporate mandate a little bit in there where they're like, as Hannibal said, this is good for the stakeholders, and I feel like it's almost like I can sense that that was part of the decision, that there wasn't like this is what serves the story. They were like this is what serves us making people comfortable. Unfortunately.
I One thing that Bryant, you and I have discussed before with Star Wars, I believe, is that when you do have these big fantasy sort of ideas put forward on these, much bigger scale kind of things in these movies, they've done all these terrible things, but they're still forgiven. The the way that sort of trickles down into the daily life, it doesn't happen on a big scale, but we learn as people to be empathetic on
Sure.
smaller issues and smaller scale things and things that happen in our day-to-day lives. And that's how, these big archetypal stories sort of affect us in that sort of regard. Um, because they're, I think you do have to leave the door open for someone to change.
Of course.
And we've seen examples of that, over the years, somebody from the KKK changing. And if you don't leave that door open for them to come around and be like, oh shit, I was a horrible person. And these were all things that I had that were like wrong belief systems, treating people the wrong way, ignorance, all those things, then they're going to fall right back into exactly what they believed before, or there's the probability of that. So, I mean, is it do you ask people not to work for their redemption? No. And I think maybe that's one thing that we don't see in these fairy tales is like the forgiveness and the redemption comes so easily at the end that there's no like they don't have to work for that redemption necessarily. And so I think that's a big miss in this film and maybe other fantastical stories like this is that it's just like, oh, you changed your mind, you're good to go in my book, buddy. You know what I mean? That I think that's sort of
You've got a
I,
daughter?
I
Ah.
think that's sort of yeah, right, right. I think that's sort of like the white person fantasy, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, like, oh no, just let us off the hook. Like, I know I've been terrible, but
I
I'm
now
white and
realize the error of my
I
ways
should be okay.
now that I have a
It's
gay son, I realize I was wrong.
right.
Yeah,
It's
like
it's definitely a white person fantasy, whereas other people, people of color and things like that, anytime they have a redemption story arc, it's fucking tough. Like they have to go through some shit to get that redemption. Um, and so I think that's one thing that's very easy for these films to do. And it's Harrison Ford, so it's a lot it's easy to give him some breathing
it
room
is
because
easy to
it's
forgive him.
fucking Harrison Ford and he's charismatic and every time he's on screen, I don't care who he's with, your eyes are on Harrison Ford because he's so
He's a
he
fun
he
actor. Yeah.
he is that movie star that,
Yeah.
you just don't that just exudes charisma naturally, and you want to forgive the guy. You're like, oh crap, man, yeah, of course I forgive you. You're Harrison Ford playing this character.
Sure.
But I mean, there's an element there, I think, where Harrison Ford's casting's doing a lot of the work that the script maybe isn't,
Well,
and his acting because his performance is pretty great in this movie. But
well,
it is still that fantasy. I think that
I think you make a good point.
that makes it very it's a complex fantasy that maybe we lean into a little too hard sometimes.
Well, I guess what my expectations for the MCU is just be a little bit, I guess, just a tiny bit smarter on this. And I feel like there
Yeah.
was commentary where we were talking about the themes of how everything is harder for this Captain America.
Yeah.
Everything is stacked against him. This ties right in there. There could have been a conversation about like, listen, as Captain America, I have to stand out there and offer this man my hand.
Mhm.
In reality, you know what? Look at what he's done. Like look
Yeah.
at all these things that he's done. And because I'm Captain America, I got to stand out there. I got to show people the ideal, but I can
Yeah.
talk to my buddy here and be like, fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Like this is the burden that is placed on like I have to both deal with what I feel about this man, but also live up to an ideal that seems impossible. And
Mhm.
that's the mission.
Yeah.
And I feel like by not having that conversation, it feels like it's not only missing from the story, but for me personally, it feels like what I disappointingly am receiving from Disney and the MCU is we're afraid to have that conversation. If we say these things, some white guy somewhere is going to get pissed off and be like, "Oh, this fucking woke movie, this movie, attacking white people." And it's like, this
Yeah.
is the world we live in. Like, how do we not have these conversations if you can't half, I guess that's the problem. You can't have half the conversation, and I feel like that's what we're doing here.
Sure.
It could have been a Captain America movie that doesn't deal with that stuff at all, and it's just like here's
Mhm.
Sam having an adventure, but
Sure.
they're playing it a little safe, I feel like.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like they wanted both. They wanted to
Mhm.
like say something important, but they also wanted to be like this easy superhero adventure movie. So then you got like so many ideas. It's all everything's starting, but never nothing really actually coming to a good conclusion.
That's a good point,
Much
Raf.
like America.
Yeah.
Storm Shadow is nice.
I mean, and you hope, because in the 50s, 60s, you had science fiction dealing with some really heavy
Yeah.
issues,
Hmm.
all kind of underneath the surface. It was all metaphor, all allegory, a lot of fun to watch, but those things connected with people still. And you hope, like, even this silly movie, with some big ideas in it that doesn't maybe handle them as well as we'd like, it still is going to affect some people who go
Yeah.
in looking for a good Captain America
Yeah.
movie, and it isn't, as because it's not dealing with things so directly, they're not going to feel attacked, or whatever. But that maybe it'll open some doorways to thinking about things. Who you hope, like, and a piece
I've
of
been
entertainment will
hopeful,
do that.
but I
But
really would appreciate
yeah,
if Kevin Feige would get out there like Rod
yeah,
Serling, because
yeah. Oh,
Rod
right.
Serling would come in and be like, "Hey, that
Yeah.
allegory, that's been fucking real life. That's in real life, assholes."
Right. 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 It's a big ask, but yeah, you hope. God
Maybe
damn
we
it.
could just have Kevin Feige come out at the end and be like, "You're in that world without the superpowers, no
Yeah.
Avengers." Well, I appreciate all the conversation. I know we're gonna take a quick break. Phil, you like Bucky in the first Captain America film. You're leaving us after
I
the
know.
first half
I
of the
know.
film. We'll see if you
I'm getting.
return with a
Oh,
new hairstyle.
when every time, right? Every
Right,
time I've got
yes.
a new
Some
style.
dark
Yeah.
dark
D
eye makeup, all that stuff.
depending on which other movie I'm making at the same time as I'm, showing up for a day on this set.
That's fair. But
Uh,
before you go, obviously
yeah.
thank you for the discussion, but also
Sure.
let people know where they can find you and your work
Oh,
online.
yeah. I'm at Phillip Creates in a bunch of different places, and then my podcast, Popsicle Pod, is at POPSKLPOD, where we've done a lot of things, and we're, continuing to do things. So you can check us out. But yeah, thanks for having me. Sorry, I have to bolt. I have to split. I have to go watch Corgi's race. So there we go.
See
Corgi
that
racing is
I would
important.
rather watch.
Right?
Captain
Have fun.
America Corgi Racing. All
Amazing.
right, we will be
Thanks,
back in
everybody.
just a minute. All right, welcome back, listeners. We are back with our second half of our discussion on Captain America: Brave New World. We are our sans one panelist, but I'm sure we'll make it as we continue on. Drew, we were just talking. Give us a view of this Captain America popcorn bucket
Yes.
that you purchased, I guess. This is a Brave New
Yeah.
World exclusive.
Yeah.
Amazing, amazing. For
Yes.
listeners who cannot see the visuals, it is a full-on metallic looking
It's
Captain
metal. Like
America
it's not
shield,
plastic.
and then it
Yeah.
pops out on the back. Instead of having a handle, it has a popcorn bucket.
Yeah.
So there you go. Exactly what the Avengers need.
Yes.
Well, let's dive into more discussion on this film. We've been talking a little bit about some of the themes, and I kind of wanted to dive even deeper into this idea about what Captain America represents in our own world. We have this recent Guardian article that was examining specifically Sam Wilson's place as Captain America in the cultural war of today. And the article states that Captain America, quote, has always been the moral conscience of the Marvel Universe and by extension, the nation, end quote. The article also suggests that perhaps nobody's in the mood for superheroes getting too real and too political anymore, and that the era of applauding movies for representation has been killed by Trump's anti-DEI edicts or edicts. I mean, this is something we've just been talking about, the corporate changes within Disney. It's not limited to Disney. We sort of see a lot of companies capitulating with this new pushback against. I mean, it's against DI. It's against what they're referring to as woke. It's mostly just
Black
anybody
people.
who's not white. Yeah,
It's mostly black people. Yeah.
mostly black people. And now we have the table set essentially with a black Captain America taking on the president in a film. We can see this happening by the I guess the additional scrutiny. We have star Anthony Mackie making a comment about Captain America and that he represents the honor, dignity, and integrity rather than America itself during this press for this film. And he got a lot of backlash. He got online commentators again saying he was being woke, that he's anti-American, and forcing him to have to go out and say that he was a proud American, that he wants to take on the shield and wants to be a hero that Cap is, that it's honor of a lifetime. Basically, he had to, say the things that we all knew were true and that he didn't need to say, but he was made to perform. Um, and so I don't know. I have all sorts of mixed feelings. I've expressed some of them. I want to hear the four of you or the three of you's feelings on this. What is Captain America today? Like who is this character? What does a Captain America movie need to look like in today's political climate? And I'll throw in one other ask about that, and that's can Disney even deliver such a film at this point? If you're retreating on diversity and DEI, can you put the film out there, the Captain America film that is needed? Um, yeah, Drew, I'll throw it to you first. What do you have to say on this?
In general, if you're looking for a non-political Captain America, look for a different character. Um, Captain America was woke in 1940 when he punched Hitler in the fucking face before we were in war. That was incredibly controversial. There's nothing wrong with wanting something that's not political, but that's not Captain America. Um, he's always been fighting for the little guy, for like looking out for the people who get lost in the shuffle. And right now, who needs that is the LGBTQ community, the people of color. Like that, this is who are under attack right now. That you see, in the comics and in the movies, even before Steve Rogers became Captain America, he's there standing up to the bullies. This is what Captain America is we see in this movie Captain America face a Hulk who he's just some dude fighting a Hulk because he needs to protect people. Like, and sometimes that means punching people, sometimes that means like speaking out for the people who need it and defending them. And I mean, like I said, there's plenty of, non-political characters or political adjacent characters. This ain't one of them.
Hannibal, what are your thoughts on, like, what does a Captain America movie need to be, or what should it be in today's political climate?
Well, the trick about Cap is that Captain America is what America wants to be, and as I said earlier, Ultimate Captain America is what Captain America really is. That if you're going to pull off a true Captain America story, you're telling the story of a myth that does not exist in practical
Hmm.
terms. Someone who is reaching for an ideal that at best is delusional and at worst is an outright lie. Based upon the actual history of the United States. And, I figured that out taking, AP history in high school. I knew that. Um, so when the question is, can Disney do that? Absolutely. Disney can tell all kind of myths. They can cover, they can be subtle, they can do all kinds of things, but they mostly won't. They mostly ch will not, partially because of choice, partially because of stakeholders, partially because of trying to deal with a lot of things that they're selling to a certain perspective. So when I read, as you said, The Guardian saying that nobody is in the mood for superheroes getting too real, that sounds like the same sort of white people who tell me, oh, I don't see color. Or, oh, can't we just hire the best person for it? Obviously, you can't. Because obviously, if the vice president and the secretary of defense are as incompetent and as frat boyish and as dumb as they are, then clearly you can't hire the best people. That's not how this works. So,
No, I
can
think
it be
they
done?
can. They just don't want to.
Yeah, thank you. It could be done, but I don't believe it could be done by them. Let's even be more specific in that way. Great, thank you, Raf. Super relevant point. So, I do believe that Captain America is the idea of a we are aspiring for something. I will note that because I've traveled through Mexico and Ghana, and I was really surprised when I did so how many people were completely losing. I saw Captain America keychains and T-shirts, and and I'm like, what the hell are you doing? Why do you have this? What do you even what are you talking about? And that's because they're not buying into the America that's bombed them and impoverished them and stolen from them and murdered them. That's not what they're doing. They're buying into the idea of an America that could be better, that could lead the world in a better fashion, not the actual America that's shipping, disease and high fructose corn syrup and destruction.
It's so interesting in the place that we are because I feel like Superman and Captain America serve very similar roles in this,
Mhm.
that they are meant to be an ideal that maybe is a fantasy, but the idea is the fantasy is kind of like Star Trek to a degree. It's like the fantasy is what we're supposed to reach for, and if we fall short, that's okay. The point is to reach for that distance and try to live up to the ideal. And there's a, I guess what I find disheartening or shocking is that there is a large amount of society, maybe larger than I thought. Maybe that's the problem for me, um, that just sees it a different way, you know? And so for them, Superman or Captain America, even though they watch these stories, they don't see him as they don't see that character as a figure of empathy or a figure of hope or welcoming. They see it a figure of power, a figure of I have
That's how
this and I can
that's how you get
destroy
Man of
you.
Steel.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's troubling.
Ubermensch.
Mhm.
Raf, do you have any thoughts on what you think a Captain America movie needs to do in today's political climate?
I mean, it depends. If you wanted to kind of like represent where our leadership is right now, then they would probably just fire Sam and put Bucky,
Not
and
even Bucky.
then
They'd get that. What's
not
his
even
name?
Bucky.
Wyatt.
John Walker.
Yeah,
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 right.
they get
John
John Walker
Walker.
back. They
Hmm.
bring John Walker. I mean, you're right. And
He's
secondly,
gonna be in Thunderbolts.
Yeah, the
maybe also
president
the
would just tweet out like, you know what? I think we should rehire that guy.
yeah.
Then they would
And
hire.
also that like even though like Ross would want redemption, like he wouldn't go to prison.
Yeah, not the Raf at least, not the
No, yeah,
Raft.
no, yeah, no. He'd be like, he'd blame it on something else. Be like, oh, it was Black Captain America that did all this on the U in DC, and then and that's what I guess Captain America would look like. right now. But yeah, I think the strongest part of Sam as a character, and I think Bucky said it in the movie, and it kind of to reiterate what Hannibal was saying is that he is like Steve is Hope, but he's aspirational because he is human, he is a man, and we're all men, we're all humans. When like we can only we want to be like Steve, but we can relate better to you.
Yeah.
So
Joaquin said that.
Yeah. No, I think it makes.
oh yeah, you're right. But yeah, so like I want it to be good. I want it to be better. I want a Captain America that stands for an ideal, but at this, so
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
interesting
know.
because I feel like what we're bumping up against is that even though it wasn't the strongest element of the MCU, the previous like Infinity Saga, they had a voice, you know? They had something to say and they were not afraid to say it at times. And now it feels like there is a little bit of softening of that. And I think what Disney doesn't realize, unfortunately for them, is that without that genuine feeling of like what it is to be a superhero, to care for others, if that's not present in there, it's not going to feel as magic. You know, these are just going to become
Yeah.
like action films, and that can only go so long. I mean, the things that brought us back to the films, I think, are the the character nuances of things like Tony Stark and Steve Rogers and these other characters, and all of that is present in Sam Wilson. But if you're afraid to touch it,
See,
you're
like
going to lose some of it.
the problem, like I guess in the beginning they, and they were still doing good movies. Um, they for some reason they could do that. They could kind of show these characters that you want to believe in, and like I think was it Civil War where Captain America, his whole like apprehension of signing the accords is like if we sign the accords, that means like we'll be beholden to men and men have agendas, right? And it's like that's why I don't want to do it. I'm like that's what you want. But you wanted Captain America, who will have to do something right even if it's against like the powers that be. The problem is that the powers that be is Disney, and they'll never like they can say it, but they'll like this is what Captain America stands for, but they'll never really show it. They'll never give him like the teeth he needs.
Yeah, yeah. There is a little bit of tooth extraction going on lately, unfortunately. Well, let me turn to another topic that I think is also maybe a little more positive and exciting for us. Let's talk about the future to some degree, the future of the MCU. So we've got Mackie obviously in this role. I think he's doing a fantastic job. He wants to portray this role for at least 10 years, he said. He'd like there to be a few more Captain America movies, as I'm sure we would. But it's also a little bit shocking to think that after Brave New World, there are only two Marvel movies standing between us and Avengers Doomsday, which supposedly heralds the return of Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom. I don't know. We'll see. There's a lot of stuff swirling around this. But we have a mandate in this film for Sam to reassemble the Avengers, and that means likely, we'll see some post-credit sequences or appearances of Captain America and Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four as he starts to build that team ahead of the 2026 Avengers film. So it's certainly a much shorter time than the buildup that we had with 5 films leading to the original Avengers. Um, and things are very different. The landscape is very different. So I just would love for us to, peer into our time stones and speculate on where the MCU is headed post Brave New World. Um, Raf, I'll throw it back to you first. Do you have any thoughts on where you think we're going in the MCU future?
I think if Sam is going to try to reassemble the Avengers, the I think why there's so little time before Doomsday is Marvel had to kind of like build up the roster, but here we kind of like know everyone at this point. So I don't think we're gonna need like this like drip fed like oh this is a character, this is a character, this is a character, and they're all gonna be on the team. In fact, he could just show up in Thunderbolts like hey I'm bringing the Avengers back, and they can all just join, and then like that's it, right? Though you really need one of them because they all have pretty much the same power set. But I don't know. I I am hopeful because you know I think when they like brought back when Disney brought back their old CEO, and then the CEO is like, yeah, quality over quantity. Let's
Yeah.
cut everything back. We got one Marvel movie one like last year, and then this is definitely the year where they're like, hey, we had a lot of things in the pipeline. Let's just shoot it out. It's not going to be great, but we're sitting on it. So I think after that, it could be good again. I don't know. I
I like that you're hopeful, Raf. We can switch roles. I'll be the slightly cynical one here because I'm not totally convinced on on the Robert Downey Jr. casting, and it feels like a lot of things are floating out there. We've got the Avengers potentially assembling, we've got Thunderbolts, so you could be doing a dark Avengers versus Avengers thing, but then there's also this idea of the multiverse, and like we might have rumors of characters returning, so maybe there's a dark version, alternate version of the Avengers we knew. It feels like a bit of a maelstrom. Hannibal, what are you seeing in in this? Like what can you read in the mud?
Well, for me, because I come from a space of gratitude, I suffered through Captain America in a motorcycle helmet.
There you go.
I've
Yeah,
I've
yeah, yeah.
suffered. I have lived through it. So, there was a quote from Ally McBeal that I used to use a lot of time. A bad day having sex is better than a good day at work.
There you go.
And
That's a good
you
quote.
know, a mid Marvel movie like Iron Man 3, which I'm still actually actively angry about, is better than anything of Captain America in a motorcycle helmet
Yeah,
any day of the
definitely,
week.
definitely. Yeah.
So
I don't
I come
know.
from that perspective. And I also understand that we are still truthfully standing up from stumbling over Jonathan Majors.
Yeah. Hmm.
That drastically altered a lot of what was going to be happening in an incredibly disadvantageous time with the strikes, with COVID, with a lot of things shifting around logistically.
Streaming dilution. Yeah. Hmm.
Exactly. So with all of those challenges, and it did feel like the post-credit scene was still feeling a little bit cangy. It was
It
just a
did.
little,
Yeah.
just a teensy, just a soupçon of Kang there. Um, but what I see is that we're going to, first of all, see a lot of people of color standing behind somebody white because Spirit knows nobody wants to hear what we heard from the Marvels or, the feedback that we heard from, honestly, from this film. A lot of people, Americans are comfortable with the black guy standing just a little bit off center, just, behind,
On your
and
left.
exactly.
Oh
And the woman a
man.
little bit farther back. Let's put her a little bit farther
Hmm.
back because that's going to make them comfortable. Um, I guess. So that'd be the first logistical thing that I believe that we're going to see. Um, I'm very concerned about Downey as Doom because new mask, same task does not feel right to me at all. I believe it's a trick. I believe that Feige's smart enough that it's a trick and that I'm being rope-a-doped. I hope that's true.
We think it's just like stunt casting.
I think it's stunt cast. I think that we will see Robert Downey as Doctor Doom in an alternate universe
Yeah.
1960s. But I don't believe, for financial reasons, we'll see much of him after that. The
I
Doomsday
Well,
notwithstanding.
it also feels a little bit like when I look at like what's going on with Star Wars, where they've pulled the fourth season of Mandalorian to make a Mandalorian Grogu film,
Mhm.
and they're bringing Robert Downey Jr. It feels like again very transparently there's a mandate at Disney of like the money is in the theaters, get us the money. We've lost a lot of money on these streaming shows. And I guess that's my worry is I do have faith in Kevin Feige having good ideas. He tends to have good ideas about how to structure these
I just
things.
think he's stretched thin.
Yeah, I think that's exactly my worry too. I feel like someone is telling him we need to make a lot of money with one of these films, and they're going, well, the trump card is bring back our guy, and
Not only is he stretched thin, but I think that it's it's the problem with making a miracle, which he clearly has done and will be studied in business schools for
Hmm.
years to come, is that once you make a miracle, people think it's easy and they start to expect it from you. It happens to me at my job all the time. It happens to lots of people who are highly competent when you do something amazing.
you're
And
right.
now people are like,
That's
do
the
it
new
again, performing
standard.
monkey. Do it again,
Yeah.
do it again, do it again.
Hmm.
So that's a difficult thing because when he pitched the original MCU to the Paramount, because remember Disney wasn't even part of this at the start. It was Paramount, and they were like, "Okay, you want us to put in half, and you've got a dozen or so year plan to make a whole bunch of movies, but that sounds kind of crazy, but whatever, we'll try." And then they started making money hand over fist, and then what's the other Hollywood saying? Everybody wants to be second. Nobody wants to be first. So
Yep.
the people who have stepped into this have never built anything, have never created anything, have never come to, and they're coming to people who already have saying, we want you to make another miracle. And that's truthfully, in the time that they're doing it, a little DCU-ish. It's a little
Yeah,
DCU-ish, like
it
you're
does
rushing
feel
it,
like
pal.
that. Hmm.
We haven't we learned from the history? Oh, right, we stopped teaching it because the Koch brothers defunded education throughout the country. So I will not I will not hold back, Bryant. You know
No,
me.
you're absolutely right. And it's weird too because we see almost a transfer where the DCU seems to be being built the way the MCU was once done. I don't know if Zaslav will let it exist and survive to flourish, but James Gunn seems to have actually gone, hey, they did this over here. Let me show you how we could do that again, as opposed to rushing towards, some specific crossover film.
Even in Creature Commandos, he's building that up. All right. He's like, okay, I saw what you were doing, Feige. I got you. I'm gonna go, okay, I
Mhm.
got this. So the future MC that we're going to see is going to see with well, first of all, with what they're calling Secret Wars, I believe we're going to see more characters on screen than we've ever seen ever. It's going to
Okay.
make Civil War look like people forgot to even send out the Evite. Um, so that's my first belief. And in that, we're going to also see a number of radical shifts. We're going to see incursions. I believe that one of my screenwriter friends pitched the one who I went to go see this movie with pitched me on the idea that he's a really genius writer named Jason Smith. He said Denzel's going to be Happy Pants Panther. He's going to be Happy Pants Panther from the Priest run, and he's going to
Oh,
come in, and it's going
interesting.
to be the strangest thing you've ever seen, and he's going to be like, and career, and that's going to be
That would be pretty sweet.
I know, right? So we're going to see these multiversal weird versions, which will
Yeah.
allow us a new T'Challa, which will allow us a new, and then in the same way that the Jonathan Hickman Wars took all these possible things and said, and we're just going to cherry pick and put
Yeah.
these special toys into this new toy box and go. And that will be the new MCU based upon the fact that we literally saw a cover of one of the Secret Wars issues in that Deadpool Wolverine movie. Um, that feels like what's going to happen because everything, like I said, everything Anthony Mackie said that he was criticized for, Kappa said in comics. All of this has happened before. All this will happen again, 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 again.
That's a good point. It's a good point. Drew, do you have anything to add?
I feel like of the four of us, I'm the most nihilistic of what's coming down the line. Um, I I am worried that Doomsday and Secret Wars is going to be the Hindenburg of the MCU. Whether they are good or not, these are like the most expensive movies ever made, just from getting Downey and the Russos back. They're never going to make their money back on this. Like it's just like it's sunken cost fallacy here at this point is what the MCU is. Like narratively wise, my guesses are Tony was the anchor being of the MCU, which is what's causing all of this. His death is what I mean. There's that wasn't just thrown out in Deadpool and Wolverine. Is like that's going to be an important thing. So Tony was the anchor being, which is what causes all of this. Um, and we're going to see. I said this from the beginning: is they're going to bring back the original Avengers, but the dark versions of them. So Tony is not Doctor Doom, but he's Doom, an alternate Tony, right? And we're going to see Chris Evans as Captain Hydra, which now we've found out he is coming back. So my prediction on that is right. We're going to see the new Avengers have to face off against the old dark like the evil version of the original Avengers. So yeah, we'll see Maestro, Ronin, Soviet,
Yo,
Black
they should bring
Widow.
back Terrence Howard as War Machine.
I
He's the Dark War
well,
Machine.
He's the Dark War.
I will
I
run out
don't
of the
think any of
theater.
them
I
want
will
to work with
run.
him. Yes, I don't think they want to work with him.
Hey, you
Same
know
with
what? You can shoot the
yeah.
MCU in different rooms now and just paste it together.
Yes, yes.
Put them in the volume.
So I mean but I think these movies are going to be the volume made movies of like, you remember in Attack of the Clones how like there's that Geonosian
Sure.
battle where each of the like Jedi are shot separately and it feels disconnected. That's going to be these two movies. Is everything is just going to feel pieced together. Hey, we just shot this. We just shot a million things with this character. How does it fit with these other pieces? I don't know. We'll fix it in editing. And I I'm very, 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 very worried about next year. I think the safest thing at this point, as much as I love shared universes, I think the safest decision for the Fantastic Four movie is it's set in another universe. So maybe we can enjoy that one without the baggage that this is
Until
going to
the
have. I
end.
mean, like, yeah, yes, of course, the end. Which that's the thing with this movie. There's no reason for the post credits multiverse just getting jammed into the like. Should not have been there. One, they aren't conveying any new information. It's a character who isn't a multiversal character being like, the multiverse is coming. We know. So I don't have high hopes for next year. I hope I'm proven wrong, but I don't, the math doesn't add up on how they can make money on these two movies.
When Kelsey Grammer in that beast suit starts hugging you, you're gonna feel different, pal. You will.
Well, I think that these are all great predictions. I don't know if we'll have to wait and see if the films turn out good, but it is interesting because I've been a defender of the MCU for a long time. I do feel like we're potentially at the twilight, years of the MCU. And the thing that I will offer is that I think that it survived things that many other cinematic universes would never stood up to. I mean, it's taken some heavy punches since Endgame, and I wish things went differently, but there still seems like there's some good stories in there to tell.
They
What?
almost like seem kind of arrogant, right? They're like, we can't do any wrong. This is a good script. I don't know. It's a script. Put it out. People gonna watch it. Okay.
It's interesting you say that because I do know people who worked at Disney for on certain Marvel things, and there was word on the lot that if you were on Disney, you could do anything you wanted because right at the time, Disney was making money. I mean, Marvel was making money hand over fist. So
Yeah.
nobody at any of the business unit could say something. And I learned that because I worked at Disney Channel when they were in like 2000, when they were like war with theme parks and there was a whole drama there. There's a real internecine kind of civil war inside of Disney that's actually happened. It's super stupid and makes no sense, but whatever. Um, but lots of people are sharpening their knives, waiting for that banner to fall, and that
Oh,
is
I'm
not
sure.
accidental. It is bad for the overall company. It is truthfully bad for the entertainment, but it's good for their little petty squabbles. And I mean, there's almost nothing more American than that, honestly.
Well, and if we're honest too, I mean, it's not there are outside of Disney, there are groups, of people waiting for the MCU to fall as well. They've been, as we said earlier, they've been predicting this fall for a decade at this point.
Since the first Iron
So,
Man.
yeah, I definitely think there will be people that cheer on those Twilight years if they truly are here.
Mhm.
Let me take us to another place really quickly. This is Fanbase Press's 15th anniversary. We're putting a focus on community. We have a Build Your Community initiative because we feel like this is something that's really needed right now with everything going on. And you can find more about that initiative at our website, fanbasepress.com. But one thing I've been wanting to do is with stories like this, examine if there is anything that the film has to say about community, if there's anything we can take away about the importance of community within our lives, within society. So I'll ask you, do you think there's anything with this film that we can that essentially reflects on this theme of community? Hannibal, I'll throw it to you first.
I think the strongest thing there is the relationship between Sam and Isaiah. That the world is falling down. No one believes you. The people who should clearly believe in mind control did not even look at mind control. Um, this is, and Sam's like, I will not leave you behind. I
Yeah,
will not. I will come for you and I will get you out. And that's, I mean, that kind of loyalty that, I mean, as Din Djarin said, bringing that back, loyalty and solidarity are the way, you know, and that kind of clarity and that kind of connection to people in community of shared values, of shared understandings, um, is enormously important in these challenged times. There's a lot of people on social media, especially Black women, talking about, yeah, we showed up and voted to try to fix this, and you're on your own. We're not helping you for the next
sure.
4 years. Figure it out. You clearly don't need us because the calls coming in from inside the house.
Mhm.
Um, so instead, they're reaching to each other. They're reaching in community in concert to help each other along the way. And that's an important thing to do when, if the Titanic's going down and there ain't no lifeboat, you got to cling to somebody. You better cling to somebody who's trying to help you and not be worried about, oh no, you were from the lower decks. Ugh, get out of here. I'm looking for ransom. What are you talking about? So, sorry, I mixed a lot of metaphors there. But
Fully approved.
So yeah, that would be the thing that I take away from this, the connection, the way that when Isaiah walked out and Sam was there for him, it was really beautiful and something that is necessary as, people are going to try to tear people who are important to you away from you and maybe even put them on a plane to Panama, even if they're not from Panama, which is an actual news story which happened. But
Yeah.
uh and when you look at that, you got to just, be there for your people and hopefully pull us all through to whatever's next.
I think these are really important things too, because I think we get so caught up in everything that's going on in our lives that sometimes we forget about the simplest things, the simplest parts of being human. And the two things that strike me about what you're saying is the incredibly like primal feeling of being alone. And essentially what Sam is doing for Isaiah is saying, you're not going to be alone. We all fear being alone, and I'm going to be here with you, whatever happens. And I see that in my children. I see how that is their deepest fear is I'm going to be alone. I'm going to be left without anybody. So I think that's a really important thing when we're going through tough times. And I also feel like what I've learned in my 40s is my relationships with people who are decades older than me are really important to me. Not every relationship like that works. There are plenty of ones where I bump up against individuals, but there are also people I really cherish who see things, from a different perspective because they are a couple decades older, and those relationships, I don't know, they're special because they're not as plentiful. You don't always. I think it's the same with relationships with younger people. I think it's important to get connections to people that are outside your age group.
Hmm. Hard agree.
Drew, what do you think this film has to say about community, if anything?
To your point of the, people outside your age group, I mean, I really did enjoy the Isaiah, Captain America, and Falcon. You had the boomer, the millennial, and the Gen Z,
Yeah.
and having them, like it starts off where Falcon's like, "Who's this old guy?" and then like gains his respect, and even like he clearly gains some respect from Isaiah, and like it wasn't just like, oh, this stupid young kid. Like they do, there's respect gained from everyone there. And even though it wasn't necessarily an important scene, but them in the limo is a very fun
Oh yeah, that
celebration
was a great
scene,
scene.
like,
Yeah.
right? And so that level of community of like those three have had three radically different lives, and still they can reach out and connect and have a family here is really, I think, really well done in this movie.
Raf, what are your thoughts? Do you think anything we can take away about community from this film?
Aside from everything that's been mentioned, which I agree with both parts, especially like the whole Hannibal, or not, what Hannibal mentioned with like Isaiah and Sam, like I really thought that was a very strong connection. And I actually didn't even think about the generational gap stuff that Drew just pointed out. Like again, is great, but for me personally, because I was kind of, I guess, everything else I didn't like about the movie kind of took more of my attention.
Sure.
Kind of just like it was just washed over me, and I don't know. I think the movie could have done better in execution, and maybe some of these ideas could have been stronger, could have been stronger, and could have come through better. But I don't know. Either way, I just think it's like it might be kind of like I don't want to say anything because it feels like I might just try to be putting something that's not there.
That's fine. But hey, let me ask you this, just because I think it is an important topic. Do you find that how do you find that you are accessing community in your own life right now? I mean, you and I are artists that often work, alone, solitary confinement of our own sort, and that is a very common, I think, a common life these days with remote working, with the situations we're in. Do you feel like you have a lack of community, or do you feel like you have relationships that you really
I
hold
mean, I
on to
do,
keep
yeah.
that?
But I mean, the world's changed, and I think, especially because I've moved,
Hmm.
a lot of like my community, yeah, I don't live like it doesn't exist locally anymore. So, I mean, it's all online or
Sure. Yeah.
so.
Well, that's
But
just as
I prefer
important.
solitude anyway because people kind of suck. The general audience kind of sucks. So like,
Well, I always
not
love
not
I
you guys. You
always
guys are
love
great,
ruining
but
your solitude, Raph. Anytime that I can get in there and mess with you, I'm happy to do so. Well, we are approaching the end of our time, but I want to do what we always do. We'll send people off with other places to go, and recommendations can be anything. We don't just recommend, films, comics. It can be literally anything that you think ties into Brave New World or the conversation we've been having. Anything you think that listeners might enjoy that enjoyed this conversation or this film. So. Ralph, I'll throw it back to you first. What do you got to recommend? What do you think people should check out?
well, I got like a couple recommendations. I hope that's okay.
It's okay.
So I think if you want to watch Captain America: Brave New World, you want to watch something like it, and by like it I mean not great. I think you should check out the 1970s Captain America movies, like Sentinel of Liberty and the sequel. I think Hannibal's slightly touched on it. I mean, it's son of Captain America in a motorcycle helmet with a plastic shield. So, like, that's pretty much Brave New World. Um, so, but like, again, like the troubles that made Brave New World. I know we talked about like all everything happening in the real world, everything happening behind the scenes, the whole shift in tone, and what needs to make money. I think a great thing to watch, even though it's been canceled, is this TV show called The Franchise. I don't know if any of
Yes.
you have heard it.
Yes.
Yep.
I think
It's
that's
great.
a great insight into how these like tentpole superhero movies are being made. And it'll kind of maybe make you appreciate Brave New World just a little bit more. So
You'll at least enjoy it. It's a
yeah, yeah.
humorous satire for sure.
Oh yeah, totally. I just wish it wasn't canceled.
Drew, what do you got to recommend?
I definitely would second the franchise. I'm a big Armando Iannucci fan. It's the creator of Veep, so it's Veep, but on the set of a Marvel movie. I'd also recommend reading The United States of Captain America by Christopher Cantwell. It's the shield is stolen, so Steve, Bucky, and Sam go on a road trip to find the shield, and that's just kind of like the setup to get to the actual like heart of it, which is along the way they meet all of the different like small town Captain Americas, the people who've been inspired by Captain America, who are inspired by that fantasy. So you have like the homeless kid on the who travels on the trains and is Captain America there. There's a young girl who makes sure that all the college girls get home from the bars okay, and like small scale people who are inspired by Captain America. That one's really great. Um, as Hannibal has mentioned multiple times on here, the Ultimate Captain America. There was a specific story by Jason Aaron in it, just called Ultimate Captain America, which was essentially an adaptation of Apocalypse Now, where he bumps into Nuke, who was like, so Cap is the Martin Sheen, and Nuke is the Captain America from Vietnam. So he's Marlon Brando, and that's one that gets into the like the real gritty, terrible parts of this. That it was a very interesting take on Captain America.
Excellent. Hannibal, what do you got for us? What do you recommend?
Well, as I said, the first thing I would have people do is watch the original Manchurian Candidate because it is dope. It's really, really dope. And if you aren't already paranoid, you're super going to be paranoid after the Manchurian Candidate. But in terms of the tension and the way that this, I believe, ratcheted up the tension, I would actually recommend Time Before Time, which is a comic by Declan Shalvey, which seems like it's doing one thing, but always then says, "Oh, the thing you think I was doing, I'm not doing that. I'm completely going to sucker punch you with this other thing." And I enjoyed Time After Time. I'm sorry, Time Before Time. Time After Time is a song by Cyndi Lauper. Time Before Time
I
is
mean, you could
really,
recommend that too. It's still good.
you say go slow, I fall behind. But so
Oh,
Time Before Time is something I would recommend in that regard. But also to look at what's happening really, I would recommend definitely get some news sources that aren't American for real. I went to a hotel once and they had the Al Jazeera feed, which was surprisingly British. Like most of the hosts were British. And I was like, that's weird. But it was a drastically
I mean,
different take on the news.
the British Empire was the proto-American Empire, so there's a reason why the British influences all around.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. So definitely, check out some I use the website allafrica.com for a lot of the news that I get. Definitely check some non-American news sources because as Megatron might tell you, you're being deceived.
well, always good advice from Megatron. Um, I will throw out there, I mean, I already mentioned it, but if you haven't seen The Hurricane, brilliant film, well worth your time. Also, well worth the knowing the history, the literal real world history behind that story as well. Um, and I will also just give a few Fanbase Press recommendations. We've tackled all of the Captain America films. So if you're looking for Fanbase features, we've got First Avenger, Winter Soldier, and Civil War ready for you to download and listen to. I'm also going to give a shout out to the Arkham Sessions, which is one of our members of our podcast network here at Fanbase Press. They started. They basically have a host who is a clinical psychologist, and her co-host, and they would break down each episode of Batman the Animated Series from a psychological perspective. Once they completed the animated series, they moved on to many other things, including the MCU. And so they have episodes as well of the First Avenger, Winter Soldier, and Civil War. I'll be sure to include links to all of those in the show notes. So if you're interested in those listeners, look for those links. Hannibal, Raf, Drew, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for making some time to talk about the latest MCU film. I want to make sure that everyone knows what you guys do, where they can find you and your work. So let's go around once more and let listeners know. Hannibal, why don't you start us off this time?
Yes, sir. I just completed season one of The Works, which is an audio fiction initiative where I do narrating and amazing actors come through and read the dialogue, including Malcolm Barrett, Sophia Fredericks, Damien Poitier, just all kind of things. And you can find links to all that on HannibalTabu.com. We just finished up False Flag, Daddy Listens, which is a kind of a G.I. Joe meets WWE sort of story that's very subversive and very funny. And well, it's funny to me. I mean, I guess America Falling Down isn't funny to some people. And then the Sundering No More Orphans, which is a we literally played Dungeons and Dragons games, and then I adapted it into fiction. And then I got people to come in and read all the NPC parts, which was amazing. Malcolm Barrett does this character called the Dark Rose, and his performance is incredible. tense. I love that performance so much. So many great things happen there. So you can find all that at HannibalTabu.com. I'm currently working on season 2 of both of those and some more things in the pipeline. That HannibalTabu.com is where you can find everything I'm doing. Thank you so much for having me.
Excellent. Raf, where can we find you and your work?
I primarily only exist on Instagram. It's Raf Salazar, so it's my name and my last name with a T at the end. Um, and if you want to check out some more recent stuff I've done, which I forgot to like add to let you know, but I'm doing art for this comic by The City Needs You, or TCNY Presents,
Okay.
called Realist Bayani. I think their Kickstarter got for the next issue was successful, so the next issue is out. If you guys want to check, which is I think chapter 6 in the overall story. But check. I think they're also on Instagram as well as Facebook, which is like TCNY or the Realist Bayani. So
Excellent. And Drew.
Yeah. You can find me on the main show, the Fanbase Weekly, where I co-host with Barbara and Claire. So that's the main place to check out my stuff.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you joining me for a fantastic discussion.
thank you.
Well, that wraps things up for this episode of the Fanbase Weekly. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm at Comic Book Slayer. On Instagram, I'm at Comic Book Sniffer, as well on Blue Sky at Comic Book Sniffer. So go ahead and give me a follow. You can also like Fanbase Press and the Fanbase Weekly on Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky, and then also Fanbase Weekly. The podcast is available on Apple Podcasts. We would love if you could give us a rating or a recommendation. Those very much help us acquire new listeners. And we always love to hear from those listening to the show. And if you want to email us, you can do that as well. You can email us at thefanbaseweekly@gmail.com. We're happy to hear your thoughts, answer any questions, read those thoughts on an episode in the future. So let us know. Send us what you think of Captain America: Brave New World. I want to do a thank you as well to our sponsor, Studio 12/7, and their comic book series, California Inc. In the 4th and final installment of the California Inc. miniseries, we'll see which alliances prevail and what the future holds for the corporate country. Is it a dystopian dream with a rude awakening, or does it pave an unprecedented path for other countries? If you're new to California Inc., you can collect the full series and experience the complete 96-page story through 4 issues, now live on Kickstarter. Visit Kickstarter.com and search for California Inc. Thank you for listening, everyone. This has been Bryant Dillon for Fanbase Press, where we celebrate fandoms and create new ones. Remember, everything about Fanbase Press right now is about community, and you are part of that valued community. Till next time, please take care of each other, friends.